Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a vodcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm privileged and delighted to welcome a very, very tall leader from the air conditioning space, Mr. Mukundan Menon. Mukundan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh. Thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you. Mukundan is the President and Chief Operating Officer of Blue Star Limited. He runs the Cooling and Purification Appliances Group. He's also the Vice President of the Refrigeration and Air Conditioning Manufacturers Association, which is also referred to as RAMA. So, Mukundan, let's talk first about Blue Star and your, you run the group, which is the Cooling and Purification Appliances Group. I'm much older than you are. So when I was growing up, and even today probably, ACs were a luxury. Today, it's become a necessity. How have you seen the air conditioning market change over the years?
Ashutosh, as you rightly mentioned, in the 80s and the early 90s, air conditioners were indeed considered a luxury.
Correct.
And owning an air conditioner was like a status symbol of sorts. Now, that was a period when the industry was shackled by the license Raj, and the air conditioners carried a whopping 100% rate of excise duty. Would you believe it? 116% rate of excise duty at one point in time. Of course, post-liberalization from 91 onwards, things started to change course, and the excise duty rate started tapering off gradually. In the late 90s, there was an entry of a lot of these domestic and international players who brought in a lot of new technology, and they set up large manufacturing facilities in India. So these new technologies, a higher scale of production and lower excise duties, all these three together resulted in the drop in prices of air conditioners.
Okay.
Along with that, there was the effect of large-scale urbanization. There was availability of power across smaller towns, tier 3 and tier 4 towns. And of course, the severe climatic conditions that we have been witnessing year after year. Now, all these put together resulted in the air conditioners moving from a necessity category from a luxury category to a necessity.
Very well said. But, I was talking to some other people from the air conditioning industry, and I was asking them the question that I'm asking you, that what is the reason that China seems to be way ahead in terms of air conditioners for consumers?
Oh, yes, actually, in terms of, so just to give you a sense, Ashutosh, about the differences between India and China, where we are today vis-a-vis China. So the Indian market is roughly 7 million units per annum. That's the consumption. Now, as against this, the China annual consumption is 70 million units. That's roughly 10x of what we consume every year. In addition to the 70 million units that China produces for its local domestic consumption, China also produces another 50 million units for exports, while Indian exports are very negligible in this category. Now, so we're talking about 120 million versus 7 million, a huge disparity between these two countries. Of course, we all know India had its own share of slow economic reforms.
Correct.
From 1991, things did change for the better. But having said that, China still has a considerable lead over us since they started driving economic growth many years before we did. And hence, China enjoys a huge time advantage over us.
So is it because the taxation structures are much higher in India?
Absolutely, Ashish. You hit it on the head, actually. So that's on the demand side. What has happened is the air conditioners, even today, attract a very high rate of GST at 28%, the highest rate of GST.
Okay.
This certainly has a dampening effect on the growth of the industry. Since the middle class consumers still find the ownership cost of an air conditioner quite challenging. And as a result of this, over a period of time, it is even today, the penetration level of air conditioners in India is still at a measly 6%. In comparison to China, which is somewhere in the 58 to 60% penetration level. So the gap is almost like a 15-year lead that China has established over India. It also has made itself the manufacturing hub of air conditioners, where the entire world lands on China to cater to its air conditioning needs.
Amazing.
And this, as a effect of this, the sheer scale of production that China has managed, it has nurtured a very healthy ecosystem of all the components that essentially go into an air conditioner, which is normally there's a lot of copper tubing, there's a lot of aluminum fins, there are compressors, there are motors, and some electronics which go into a air conditioner of today. So what has happened is China has become a large ecosystem for all the components, and this also has further increased China's competitive edge vis-a-vis India.
Very well said. Very, very well said.
There is one more thought. However, just to give you, Ashutosh, a sense that things are still not completely lost. There is always light at the end of the tunnel. The good news is that the Indian government has now taken notice of this situation, and they see this as an opportunity. That's the bright thing about this.
Okay.
The government has included the air conditioners in the Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative, which is essentially an effort to encourage domestic manufacturing by offering attractive production-linked incentives to who are setting up a facility in India. And this will reduce our dependence on imports, both for finished goods as well as for the components.
Very well said.
So that's a very good news. And I strongly believe that India will certainly bridge the gap. It may not be able to completely bridge the gap, but I suppose it will narrow the gap with China over the next 10 years or so. And there is also a lot of hope that with this PLI, we as Indians can aspire to be an alternative to China for global exports as well.
Fantastic, fantastic. So let's now move to another aspect of air conditioners, which is, building a brand. Blue Star has traditionally been known in the institutional cooling systems, and it's a powerhouse. You're relatively younger in consumer products, and yet you've managed to build a very, very strong brand under your leadership. So my question to you is, what goes into building a successful consumer durable brand?
Right, Ashutosh. As you would know, Blue Star is a brand which was born way back in 1943. And over the last 7 decades, it flourished in India. And I would say that for a major portion of the 7 decades, for almost 6 decades, we were more known in the commercial air conditioning space and less in the residential air conditioning space.
Correct.
So the fundamentals of building the brand, being getting the marketing mix right, which is the product portfolio, the pricing, the distribution, the communication, all this is certainly essential hygiene factor. However, to my mind, I believe that the power of brand resides in the minds of our consumers. And that comes from what they have experienced about the brand over a long period of time. We have been very fortunate that we have won the trust and confidence of our customers over this 7 decades or so. And to be honest to you, our brand building investments have always been very modest. But despite that, we enjoy a leadership position in most of the businesses that we are in. And that comes from the word of mouth, the word of mouth, positive word of mouth that brand Blue Star enjoys. So to my mind, everything with consumer at the center of our thing. So what we have been doing is we have been focusing on enhancing value to consumer needs. That means adding thoughtful and useful features while still keeping the product affordable. And we have been doing constantly across our businesses, innovation while designing products, innovation in the way we think and work, and innovation even in the way we deliver an overall customer experience over the span of the lifespan of the product. So we've paid a lot of attention, and we've seen many of our consumers becoming our brand ambassador. And to my mind, this is a key aspect, that is keeping highly customer-centric approach has been the mantra of our success. I'd also like to add a point that over this long period of time, we have also consistently refreshed our brand identity, which while we have stayed true to our core values, we have been successful in understanding how our audiences are changing. And we have hence modified our brand communication accordingly over this span of time.
Fantastic. And you have been associated with the brand since 1984. What have been some of your challenges and your learnings?
So when I entered this industry, the air conditioning market or the industry was very nascent actually. Penetration of air conditioners in the residential segment was minuscule, close to zero. Even in offices and commercial segment, for example, the usage was very selective. Like offices were generally non-air conditioned, except for a few cabins for senior management staff. Showrooms and restaurants were also slowly transitioning from non-air conditioned spaces to partially air conditioned spaces. You had a section in the restaurant said air conditioned, the section, then you have a rest of it is a non-air conditioned section.
Yeah.
Similarly, showrooms also, like textile showrooms also had an air conditioned bay and a non-air conditioned large bay. So
Yes.
this was the time where people were slowly moving into air conditioning. Even hotels had slowly started air conditioning some of their rooms and some of the common areas in a very phased manner. So as an air conditioning equipment supplier, the first challenge that I used to face was to convince the client to go in for air conditioning, even before you start selling him your brand. So you first have to tell him how this will help him do his business better. So that was a big challenge and a unique challenge of those days, which doesn't exist today, obviously. But being part of this journey has certainly given me a solid foundation in selling, I suppose. So that's been as far as the early days are concerned. Later on, during the late 90s, when the MNCs entered the country, there was a talk, or there was a thought that Indian brands will not survive the onslaught of these global players because they come with deep pockets, obviously. And I'm really happy that Blue Star, we had this uncanny ability. We kept reinventing ourselves, and we continued to be relevant and emerge successful. That gives me a lot of satisfaction, actually. So as you said, Ashutosh, we also come from a pedigree of commercial air conditioning. So the residential market in the country in the 90s started opening up, but Blue Star decided to stay away from the residential segment since our commercial air conditioning business was very significant, and we needed to utilize all our resources to leverage the opportunities that existed in the space. You would remember the 2001 to 2007 period when there was a significant demand for IT, information technology, office spaces, retail businesses like cafes, showrooms, malls, and multiplexes were mushrooming all over the place. So we had our hands full with that commercial air conditioning opportunity. But when the recession, the global recession hit us in 2008-9 period, we started facing heavy weather with our B2B business. And probably to my mind, this has been the most challenging phase that the company has faced in its entire history.
Amazing.
But I'm so glad that we decided to reinvent it ourselves. We decided to get into the residential business through the retail channel. This was a huge challenge, Ashutosh, for a company which was so much deeply ingrained in the B2B space and the commercial air conditioning space. So we had to reinvent the 4 Ps of marketing. We had to launch a range of aesthetically appealing air conditioners, which would cater to the residential market rather than a product which was meant for an industry or a commercial application. We had to work on our price points across different categories. And most importantly, we had to get into the retail outlets where we had never been present across the country. So the retailers, the modern trade, the e-commerce. Now, these were the areas which we had to sort of get into. And we got a good welcome from the retailers. And we parallelly ran a campaign, which was, I remember it was called Get Office Like Cooling at Home. This was essentially...
I remember that. Yes.
Yes. So that was, Ashutosh, that this was essentially to bridge the gap between the business that we were known for and a business that we wanted to be known for, that is from office to home, So it was that journey. And honestly, we never looked back. Consumers gave us such a grand welcome into their homes. And our market share, which was less than 3 to 4%, we grew to 13% as it is today. So it's been one great, satisfying journey. It also taught us the importance of the need to adapt and change when things start changing, so that was that conscious change which we made. And after we took the decision to get into residential market through retail, I think we did a fantastic job of having a good strategy implemented with some excellent execution skills. And our entire team takes the credit for doing this fantastic job for Blue Star.
Fantastic. So let me move to another aspect of air conditioning now. Air conditioners are often spoken about as one of the instruments that have been creating global warming. And I know that you have been reinventing your air conditioners a lot, etc. There is also a green building movement in India. I'd love to hear your perspective on the green building movement, and followed by your perspective on environmental, social, and governance matters.
Right. So in India, the green building movement actually was adopted by the Confederation of Indian Industry way back in the year 2001.
Okay.
So what they did was they formed a Indian Green Building Council. We call it IGPC, which actively promotes the green building concept in India. And Blue Star was fortunate to be a founding member of the same way back in 2001.
Right.
The vision was very simple: to have a sustainable built environment for all, and also to make India one among the global leaders in this space by the year 2025, 4 years from now, for example. And I'm really happy we have made great progress. The specific idea of any typical green building project is to reduce the impact of the construction industry on the environment. So that's essentially the idea.
Okay.
And there are multiple layers and multiple criteria on the basis of which a building is rated, whether it's a silver, a gold, or a platinum, and it is certified by IGBC.
Okay.
And this is not only at the time of at the initial stages when you're putting up a building, but we have to assure and ensure that the building follows these criteria throughout the life of the building. Wow. So it's a long-term kind of commitment that anybody makes to this green building concept.
Wonderful.
So yeah.
So and now what is also happening is that most companies, and certainly large companies like Blue Star, are also talking about ESG.
Right.
Everyone is talking about ESG, and the environment is very critical. Right. I would love to get your thoughts on ESG and what are you doing?
Yes. So as you said, it's becoming the buzzword in corporate boardrooms. So essentially, in terms of environment, it's very simple. Our priority has always been to be ahead of the curve in the areas of what really we have a control over, which is energy efficiency, because we produce air conditioners which are typically energy guzzling products. So high energy efficiency product. Ozone depletion, because we use refrigerants which have an impact on the global warming and the ozone depletion, and global warming. So it's essentially around energy efficiency, ozone depletion, and global warming that we put in a lot of efforts to make products with refrigerants which do not deplete the ozone layer, which has the lowest impact on the global warming, and which are highly energy efficient. So every year we come out with products which is one step ahead in this, as far as this journey is concerned. So that's on the environment piece. We've also extended a little in terms of institutionalizing a circular economy framework, which is essentially an extension of the product life cycle, so that that also reduces the impact on the environment. And even so, we have this very clear recycling plan across the value chain for any of the products that have an end of life. So we have done our best in those areas. And the social thing is generally around gender diversity. We do something on the affirmative action on the supplier diversity across different sort of SC/ST. We are conscious of that as well. And of course, most of our CSR activities that we do today, we've all along been focusing on 3 areas, which is health, hygiene, and wellness. So most of our CSR activities are revolving around these 3 areas of health, hygiene, and wellness. Wonderful. And of course, in terms of governance, we are really proud that we set up very high governance standards. We ensure transparency across the communication with all our stakeholders. We have been, I think, repeatedly for the last 2-3 years, we have also won the Golden Peacock Award for very high standards of governance. So this is sort of ingrained in us, and I think we do a pretty good job about that.
Wonderful. So I'm going to now move because of our time, and you've been running such a large operation. What would you say is your leadership style?
Typically in a senior leadership role, one is likely to have a blend of a couple of different leadership styles, as you would imagine. And to my mind, the dominant leadership style that I demonstrate is a mix of a visionary kind of style, where I'm able to, I try and mobilize the people towards a common vision or a common goal. And I couple this with a democratic approach where I forge a consensus through participation. The consensus, the participation, and that democratic approach for me is so very crucial to sort of leading a team. So while there is a visionary aspect of me where I have a vision and a dream which I put across and get the buy-in of the entire team, the way I do it is quite democratic, and I feel happy about the way I manage this combination.
Wonderful. So I'm now going to move, Mukundan, to the last segment of our conversation with some personal questions for you. Our guests love to, our viewers and listeners love to know a little more about the guest. So my first question to you is that in an amazing journey that you've had so far, what would you say are 3 or 4 key milestones or pivot points?
So what comes to my mind is that the first milestone was my making a choice to pursue sales and marketing as a career. That too after finishing a background of a technical education, a graduation in mechanical engineering. From there, a conscious decision to choose sales and marketing as a career. So that was, I think, a very important milestone in my career.
Correct.
The second one was after a 14-year stint in Blue Star, I did a conscious decision to take up an overseas assignment abroad, actually. So, and I think that has really helped me in good stead because of the huge global exposure that I got during that tenure of roughly 6.5 to 7 years. So that was another very important milestone, I suppose. And the third one, which I cherish the most, I would say, is the way I led Blue Star into the retail foray, and which has helped us to become a significant player in the residential segment. So
Fantastic.
3 important milestones that come to my mind.
Fantastic. Fantastic. And for a person who has achieved so much and who's leading such large teams, what are some of the core values you believe in?
So, Ashutosh, the core values, there are a few of them which I very strongly believe in and which I practice sort of day in and day out. One is the respect for others, and that's something which is something which comes out when people interact with me, and I do a lot of focus on that. The respect for others. For me, integrity is again a very important core value, which is non-negotiable. So in a way, so that's something which is very valuable to me. And I also sort of value the humility in a person, that as you grow higher in an organization or across in your life, that humility which should come has to really be seen, so it should not be taken over by arrogance. So these are things which are very, very important for me, and these are things which I honestly would never compromise ever, actually.
So I have time for 3 more questions for you. My next question is that for someone who has achieved so much in your career, and I'm sure there's so much more to look forward to, but from where you stand today, what does success mean to Mukundan?
Yes, so to my mind, success is something which, when I accomplish something I set out to do, without compromising on those 3 core values which I mentioned, so when I do something and none of those core values are compromised, that gives me a sense of success. And in terms of impact, I also feel that I'm closely, success to me is also closely connected with my ability to touch as many lives positively around me. So that gives me a huge amount of satisfaction, the amount of lives that I'm able to touch in a positive manner, so that their lives become better. So a combination of non-compromising core values and ability to touch lives, as many lives as possible in a positive manner that I can possibly do. This is what success means to me.
Wonderful. And a follow-on question from success is, who or what inspires you?
So I've always been inspired by my dad. My dad comes from a technical background. He was a foundry manager in a castings firm which was making castings for the auto industry. Now, I've seen him go through life with a lot of difficulties, because we used to come from a very middle class family. We were at that time in Bombay, and my dad used to work sometimes 2 shifts in a day, like the morning shift and the night shift. I've seen him manage life with just a few hours of sleep, 4-5 hours, just to ensure a good education for the family. So he has been a huge inspiration. He's been somebody who I look forward to, and I look up to, and most of the grit and determination that I sometimes display comes from him.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And my last question to you, and this is for the thousands of young people who will be watching our conversation or listening to our conversation. What would your advice be to young managers starting off on their life in the corporate world?
Well, I would say, I say this to my daughter, Shruti, who is 24 years old, and I would say she's in this group of young managers. So she's this is what I keep telling her again and again, and I want to sort of put it across, is that there is no shortcut to success, and there is absolutely no substitute for hard work. And this should be deeply ingrained in them. I also sometimes tell them that if there is a choice, if there is a choice in choosing a career which is closer to your passion, choose that, because then you will certainly excel, because you will put your heart and soul into it. And once you put your heart and soul into it, the outcomes and the results are certainly going to be at a different level compared to being forced to do something. So if you have a choice, which I know that it may not be the case with many, but if you do have a choice, please follow that route which is closer to your heart. This is one small piece of advice I would.
Fantastic. And this is fabulous advice. I mean, so many young people always gain so much from experienced people like you. Mukundan, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure and a privilege speaking to you. Thank you for taking me down this amazing journey of Blue Star and how you have built such a large consumer business for the company. And thank you for sharing so much about ESG and the green building movement. Thank you again, and good luck.
Thank you, Ashutosh. It was a privilege to be on your show, and thank you, and wish you the very best. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to The Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for The Brand Called You.